The first time Dr. Elaine Mercer saw Owen Carter standing in front of the MRI screen, she thought he had forgotten his place. He was not a doctor. He was not a surgeon. He was not one of the invited specialists standing in polished shoes outside the glass wall of the new imaging suite. He was an imaging technician in a faded blue scrub top, with dark circles under his eyes, a hospital badge clipped slightly crooked to his pocket, and one hand resting on the edge of a monitor that had just displayed a scan everyone else had already called normal. Behind him, through the observation room window, the new $12 million MRI machine sat quiet under soft white lights. Beyond the double doors, donors were touring the pediatric diagnostics wing with printed programs and small plates of food they did not know where to put. A photographer from the hospital foundation was waiting near the ribbon. A local news crew had been told to stay ready for a short demonstration. On the monitor, a 6-year-old boy's brain scan glowed in clean black, white and gray layers. Dr. Mercer stepped into the room with 2 neurologists, a pediatric radiologist, her chief operations officer, and a donor representative behind her. "Owen," she said, keeping her voice professional because the glass door was open, "why is this scan still on screen?" Owen did not look away from it. "There's a shadow near the left temporal vessel line." The pediatric radiologist, Dr. Harlan, frowned. "That scan has been reviewed." "I know. It is within normal limits." Owen zoomed in slightly, not dramatically, not with the confidence of someone trying to win an argument, but with the careful movement of a man who knew how easy it was to miss something small. "There," he said. Dr. Mercer looked at the screen. She saw a faint gray irregularity so subtle it could have been nothing, a fold, a motion artifact, a harmless shadow from the scan angle. She looked back at Owen. "You are delaying the opening demonstration for that." A few people in the room shifted. Someone outside laughed at something a donor said. The sound came through the glass like it belonged to another world. Owen finally turned. His daughter Grace sat on a chair near the back wall, holding a coloring book in her lap. She was 8 years old, small for her age, wearing a yellow cardigan and pink sneakers, watching her father with the tense familiarity of a child who had seen adults dismiss him before. Owen looked at Grace for 1 second, then back at Dr. Mercer. "I think the child needs a repeat scan, with contrast and vascular sequence." Dr. Harlan's eyebrows rose. "You think?" "Yes." Dr. Mercer's expression tightened. "Owen, this is a routine post-fall scan. The boy is awake, stable, neurologically responsive, and already cleared by 2 physicians. We have a wing opening in 13 minutes, a donor family waiting, and a child's mother being told everything looks fine. We are not ordering an additional scan because a technician is uncomfortable with a shadow." Owen's voice stayed calm. "I am not uncomfortable with the shadow. I am uncomfortable with what the shadow is hiding." The room went quiet. Dr. Mercer looked at him, the way powerful people look at a person who has moved from inconvenient to disruptive. "This hospital does not diagnose by instinct." "No," Owen said, "but sometimes instinct is where looking twice begins." 2 hours later, the same child would collapse in the hallway outside pediatric recovery, his mother screaming his name while nurses rushed in from 3 directions. The scan everyone had called normal would be reopened on every monitor in the wing, and Dr. Elaine Mercer would stand behind Owen Carter in a silent imaging room, watching the tiny shadow become the first visible sign of a rare vascular bleed that might have been caught before the crisis if anyone had listened to the man holding the mouse. St. Bridget's Children's Hospital had spent 3 years building the new pediatric diagnostics wing. The donor plaque near the entrance listed foundations, families, corporations, and one billionaire whose name appeared in letters large enough to suggest generosity needed good lighting. The wing had curved white walls, soft blue floors, animal murals painted near every exam room, and ceiling lights designed to look like clouds. The new MRI suite was its centerpiece, advertised as faster, quieter, and safer for young patients who were afraid of machines that sounded like thunder. For Dr. Elaine Mercer, the wing represented more than technology. It represented survival. She had become hospital director at 38, after St. Brigid's lost 2 major donors, failed an audit, and nearly had to close one of its specialty programs. In 5 years, she restored funding, recruited specialists, rebuilt the foundation board, and turned a struggling regional hospital into a place families traveled to reach. She was brilliant, composed, and brutally aware that hospitals did not run on compassion alone. They ran on grants, ratings, donor confidence, insurance agreements, staffing budgets, and the quiet arithmetic of never looking uncertain when important people were watching. Elaine did not hate uncertainty. She feared what uncertainty cost. Owen Carter knew that fear from the other side. He had worked in medical imaging for 14 years, first at a trauma center, then a neurological clinic, then St. Brigid's. He was not the loudest person in any room. He did not collect friends easily. He had the stillness of someone who had spent too many nights watching monitors while families waited outside doors for answers that could change the rest of their lives. His wife, Julia, used to say that Owen saw grief before it introduced itself. Julia died 4 years earlier after a rare cardiac complication that began with symptoms everyone assumed were small: tiredness, headache, a strange tightness in the chest. The first clinic sent her home. The second said anxiety. By the time the third looked deeper, the problem was no longer early. Grace had been 4 then. She remembered hospital chairs, vending machine crackers, and her father holding her hand so tightly he kept apologizing. Since Julia's death, Owen had raised Grace around schedules, careful meals, second-hand books, and the knowledge that adults could be kind and still miss important things. That was why he looked twice. At every scan, every image, every flicker, every tiny edge where something did not belong. It made him slow sometimes. It made him annoying sometimes. It also made him valuable to doctors who cared more about answers than hierarchy. But in a hospital full of credentials, a technician's worry remained easy to file under caution, personality, or overreaction. Grace knew this. She had heard people call her father too careful. She had heard one resident joke that Owen could find danger in a blank wall. She had once asked him if being careful made people mad. Owen told her, only when they are in a hurry. On the morning the new wing opened, Grace's school called at 6:35. A gas leak in a nearby building had closed the block. No students were allowed inside. The neighbor who usually helped was at work. The backup babysitter had the flu. Owen stood in their kitchen with his phone in one hand and Grace's lunchbox in the other, doing the kind of math single parents know too well. Grace came out of her room with her backpack already on. "I can come," she said. "You will be bored. I have markers. You will have to sit quietly. I know. There will be doctors everywhere." She made a face. "I've survived worse." He almost smiled. He brought her because the hospital opening could not lose staff, and because Owen Carter did not have the luxury of pretending life came in clean separate boxes labeled work and family. The boy whose scan changed everything was named Noah Bell. He arrived at St. Brigid's at 9:12 that morning with his mother, Marissa, after falling from the second level of an indoor play structure at a birthday party. He had cried immediately, answered questions, moved all limbs, and complained mostly about wanting his dinosaur sweatshirt back. The emergency physician ordered imaging out of caution because Noah had hit the side of his head against a padded support beam hard enough to bruise. The first CT was reassuring. The MRI was ordered because St. Brigid's wanted to demonstrate the new pediatric protocol for mild head trauma, and because Noah's mother agreed after being told it would be safe, quick, and thorough. Noah was brave until the machine noise started. Owen spoke to him through the microphone with the calm rhythm he used for frightened children. "You are doing great, buddy. The machine is loud, but it is just taking pictures, like a camera with a drum set." Noah sniffed. "Is my mom there?" "She is right outside." "Can she hear me?" "Yes." "Can dinosaurs get MRI pictures?" Owen paused. "Only very cooperative ones." Grace, sitting in the corner with headphones on, smiled into her coloring book. The scan finished cleanly. Noah went back to his mother with a sticker and a cup of apple juice. The automated sequence processed. Dr. Harlan reviewed the images quickly, then more carefully. No bleed, no fracture, no mass effect, no obvious emergency. Normal. That word moved through the system quickly. Normal was efficient. Normal reassured families. Normal kept rooms moving and ribbon cuttings on time. Owen saw the shadow 9 minutes after the review. He had reopened the sequence because something in the transition slice bothered him. Not enough to name at first. Just a soft interruption in the vessel line near the left temporal region, a gray smudge sitting where anatomy should have been sharper. He compared it to the previous angle. Then another. The shadow appeared, disappeared, then returned in a way artifacts sometimes did. But Owen had seen a similar kind of disappearing shadow once before. Not in a child, not exactly there, but in a patient at the trauma center years earlier, where a tiny vascular injury had hidden behind motion and timing until the patient's condition changed in the hallway. He pulled the sequence again. Then he asked Dr. Harlan to look. Harlan stood over his shoulder for less than 40 seconds. Motion artifact. It repeats across 2 planes. Barely. It changes around the vessel. That does not make it pathology. No, but it makes it worth a vascular sequence. Harlan looked toward the hallway, where Foundation staff were placing blue ribbons near the entrance. Owen, not today. That was the first warning. Not the scan, the sentence. Not today. As if illness checked calendars. Owen kept the scan open. By 10:55, Dr. Mercer entered the room and heard the warning translated through irritation. A technician delaying discharge, a shadow already reviewed, a routine patient, a ceremony waiting. She made the decision quickly. Too quickly. Noah Bell was cleared for observation and discharge instructions. His mother cried with relief when a nurse told her the scan looked good. Noah asked if he could still have birthday cake later. Marissa laughed through tears and said maybe a small piece. Owen watched from the hallway. Grace stood beside him. "Is the boy okay?" she asked. Owen did not answer immediately. "He looks okay." Grace looked up at him. "That's not what I asked." He rubbed a hand over his face. "I know." The ribbon cutting happened at 11:30. Cameras flashed. Dr. Mercer spoke about access, innovation, and the future of pediatric care. Donors smiled. The billionaire's daughter cut the ribbon with oversized scissors. Hospital staff clapped. In the background, a nurse wheeled Noah past the hallway toward pediatric observation, his mother walking beside him with one hand on his shoulder. Owen saw him pass. He saw Noah blink slowly, then rub his left eye. Small things. Always small things. Owen moved before he decided to. He walked toward the observation corridor and caught the nurse before they entered the room. "Has he complained about vision?" The nurse Tessa glanced down at Noah. "No, why?" Noah said, "The lights are weird." Marissa looked worried. "What do you mean, honey?" Noah shrugged. "They're sparkly." Owen felt the floor of his stomach drop. Tessa looked at him. She had worked with Owen long enough to recognize the difference between concern and habit. "I'll call Dr. Harlan." "Call Neuro," Owen said, And keep him here. Dr. Harlan arrived irritated, then less irritated when Noah vomited without warning into the basin Tessa grabbed just in time. Within 7 minutes, Noah became sleepy. Within 9 minutes, his speech changed. Within 12 minutes, he collapsed when trying to stand. The hallway transformed. Tessa hit the emergency call. Marissa screamed Noah's name. 2 nurses rushed in. Dr. Harlan called for rapid response. A pediatric neurologist came running from the ceremony still wearing a foundation ribbon pinned to his coat. Dr. Mercer heard the emergency alert from the lobby. She turned so fast Claire, her assistant, nearly collided with her. What happened? Pediatric observation, Noah Bell. The name moved through Elaine before the meaning did. Noah Bell. The scan. The shadow. By the time she reached the corridor, Noah was being moved toward imaging again. His mother was sobbing. Harlan's face was pale. Owen was walking beside the gurney, one hand on the rail, giving information clearly. Prior MRI showed a subtle left temporal vessel-adjacent shadow. Now acute neurological change, vomiting, visual disturbance, altered speech. He needs contrast vascular sequence now. No one told him to step back. This time, no one had time. Noah went back into the MRI suite. Owen prepared the sequence with hands so steady that Grace, watching through the window from a chair Claire had pulled close, thought he looked almost like a different person. Not calmer, more complete. Like all the quiet parts of him had finally been given permission to do what they were built for. Dr. Mercer stood behind him. "Can you find it again?" she asked. Owen did not turn. "Yes." The second scan showed what the first had whispered. A tiny vascular malformation near the left temporal area had begun bleeding slowly after the fall. It had been hidden, subtle, not obvious on the first scan without the right sequence. Now, with symptoms evolving and the correct imaging, it appeared clearly enough that the room stopped breathing for a second. Dr. Patel, the pediatric neurosurgeon, leaned toward the monitor. "There." Owen pointed without satisfaction. "That is where the shadow was." No one argued. The room moved fast after that. Noah was transferred to the pediatric surgical team. Marissa signed forms with shaking hands. Dr. Patel explained that they had caught the bleed before catastrophic pressure developed, but intervention was needed immediately. There were risks. There were always risks, but there was also time. Time they almost did not have. Marissa grabbed Owen's sleeve as the team moved Noah. "You saw it." Owen stopped. She looked destroyed and desperate, and hopeful in the unbearable way parents look when their child is behind doors they cannot open. "You saw it before." Owen did not know how to answer without harming her. "I saw something that needed a second look." Marissa turned toward Dr. Mercer, standing behind them. "Then why didn't he get one?" The hallway went silent in the way public places become silent when truth enters without permission. Dr. Mercer could have reached for language, protocol, clinical judgment, review standards, timing. She had all the words. She had used them for years. But Marissa was not asking for a statement. She was asking why her son had nearly fallen through a crack between confidence and care. Elaine looked at Owen. Then she looked back at Marissa. "Because I made the wrong decision." The words seemed to cost her more than any donor speech she had ever given. Marissa stared at her, then followed the surgical nurse down the hall. Noah's surgery lasted 3 hours and 22 minutes. During that time, the new imaging wing stopped being a stage and became a hospital again. Donors left quietly. The news crew packed up without the cheerful feature they had been promised. Staff moved in lowered voices. Dr. Mercer canceled the remaining ceremony schedule and stayed near the surgical waiting room until Claire told her she was making people more nervous by standing still. Grace sat beside Owen in the imaging office. "You found it," she said. He looked at the floor. "Not soon enough. But you found it." He closed his eyes. That was how children survived adults sometimes. They held the part of the truth that hurt less. At 3:48, Dr. Patel came out. Noah was stable. The bleeding had been controlled. The malformation had been treated. He would need monitoring, follow-up, and a recovery no child should have to understand, but he was alive and expected to wake. Marissa covered her mouth and bent forward like someone whose bones had been removed. Owen stood at the end of the hallway, far enough away not to intrude. Dr. Mercer saw him and walked over. For a long moment, neither spoke. Then she said, "You saved his life." Owen shook his head. "No, the surgical team did. You gave them time." He looked through the glass toward the recovery corridor. "After losing some." Elaine absorbed the correction. It was true, and because it was true, it deserved to stand. That evening, after Noah was settled in pediatric ICU, Dr. Mercer found Owen in the empty MRI control room. The lights were dim. Grace slept in a chair with Owen's jacket over her. The $12 million machine sat quiet behind the glass, its smooth white surface reflecting the blue glow of the monitors. Owen had the first scan open again. The shadow was there. Tiny, easy to dismiss, impossible to unsee once you knew. Elaine stood beside him. "I owe you an apology." Owen did not look away from the screen. "Yes. I dismissed your concern. Yes. I allowed the opening schedule and the public moment to affect my judgment." He turned then. "That is the part that matters." "I know." His voice remained calm, but there was something underneath it now. "No, you know now." Elaine looked toward Grace. The girl's small hand rested on the coloring book in her lap. On the open page was a drawing of a machine, a boy and a gray spot circled in purple. Under it, Grace had written, "Dad saw the whisper." Elaine's face changed. "She heard you," Owen said. Elaine swallowed. "I know. She has heard enough people make careful sound like a problem." "I am sorry." Owen looked at the scan again. "My wife died because 3 people saw small things and explained them away." The sentence landed so softly, it was almost worse than if he had shouted. Elaine stood still. "I did not know." "No." Owen closed the scan. "You didn't ask why I looked twice." The next morning, Dr. Mercer called a closed clinical review. Every person involved attended: radiology, emergency, neurology, imaging, nursing, operations, risk, and quality. Owen was there because Elaine invited him by name. Grace was at school, though she had asked whether the doctors were in trouble. Owen told her, "They are supposed to be learning." The review began with Dr. Mercer, standing at the front of the conference room. Yesterday, a pediatric patient deteriorated after an initial scan was interpreted as normal. Before that deterioration, Owen Carter identified a subtle irregularity and recommended additional imaging. I declined that recommendation. The patient survived because the concern was raised again and acted on after symptoms progressed. That is not the process I want in this hospital. The room was silent. Dr. Harlan shifted in his chair. Elaine continued, "We are not here to punish caution. We are here because caution was treated as inconvenience." Risk management looked uncomfortable. Elaine turned toward Owen. "I have asked Mr. Carter to explain what he saw." A few eyes moved with surprise. A technician presenting to physicians was not normal. That was part of the problem. Owen stood and connected the scan. He showed the first image. He did not dramatize. He did not accuse. He showed the shadow, the planes where it repeated, the sequence that might have clarified it, the symptom timeline, and the second scan. Dr. Harlan interrupted once. In fairness, the first scan was subtle. Owen looked at him. Yes. The answer removed the defense without attacking it. Owen continued. Subtle does not mean imaginary. It means the next question matters more. By the end of the review, Dr. Mercer announced 3 policy changes. Imaging technicians could request secondary radiologist review when repeatable anomalies appeared, with documented reason. Pediatric scans with technician-raised concerns required a short clinical pause before discharge, and no public event, donor tour, or administrative schedule could interfere with active patient review. The operations officer objected carefully. That may create delays. Elaine looked at him. Yes. He stopped. Owen almost smiled. After the meeting, Dr. Harlan found Owen near the elevator. I should have looked longer. Owen waited. Harlan's face tightened with real discomfort. I'm sorry. Owen nodded. Look longer next time. Harlan nodded too. Noah Bell woke fully the next day. His first words were about his dinosaur sweatshirt. Marissa cried again, but differently this time. Owen did not visit until she asked for him. He entered the room quietly. Noah had a bandage, an IV, and a stuffed green dinosaur someone from Child Life had brought him. He looked smaller than before and somehow stronger. Marissa stood when Owen came in. This is the man who saw the shadow, she told Noah. Noah looked at him. Was it a bad shadow? Owen sat carefully in the chair beside the bed. It was a warning shadow. Like in cartoons. Sort of. Did you fight it? Owen thought about that. Some very good doctors did. Noah looked disappointed. Did you help? Marissa answered before Owen could. Yes. The word stayed with him all the way home. That night Grace asked about the boy. He is awake, Owen said. Good. She was coloring at the kitchen table, drawing a hospital with a giant eye on the roof. What is that? A hospital that looks twice. Owen sat across from her, suddenly unable to speak. Grace looked up. Is that weird? No, he said, that is perfect. 6 months later, St. Bridget's opened a new review room beside pediatric imaging. Not a donor room, not a public room. A working room with monitors, low lights, and space for radiologists, technicians, and physicians to review difficult cases together. Elaine refused to name it after a donor. The small sign beside the door read, Second Look Room. Under it, in smaller letters, was a sentence the staff had begun repeating. Subtle does not mean imaginary. Owen hated that people knew it came from him. Grace loved it. On the wall inside the room, framed behind glass, was Grace's drawing of the hospital with one huge eye looking twice. Elaine asked permission before hanging it. Grace negotiated for a small plaque that said, drawn by Grace Carter, age 8. Elaine agreed immediately. The second look room changed the culture slowly, which is the only way cultures really change. Doctors still disagreed, technicians still hesitated sometimes, schedules still pressed, donors still visited, but now when someone said, I know it is probably nothing, the next question became, does it repeat, instead of can it wait? That question mattered. Within a year the process caught 3 issues early. One was minor. One changed a treatment plan. One prevented a child with a rare vascular problem from being sent home before additional monitoring. None became news. Elaine considered that success. Owen remained an imaging technician because he refused administrative roles twice. He did accept a new title, Lead Imaging Review Specialist. It came with better pay, better hours, and the ability to leave for Grace's school emergencies, without begging supervisors for mercy disguised as scheduling. Grace still came to the hospital sometimes. She knew which vending machine took wrinkled dollar bills and which nurses kept crayons. Noah Bell returned for follow-up appointments and always waved at Owen like they shared a secret mission. One afternoon, nearly a year after the opening, Noah came in with his mother for a routine scan. He wore the dinosaur sweatshirt. "You found the shadow," he said, pointing at Owen. Owen smiled. "You remember that. My mom tells everyone." Marissa laughed softly. "Not everyone." Owen gave Noah headphones before the scan. "Ready?" Noah nodded. "Tell the machine to look twice." Owen looked through the window at Grace, sitting in the corner with homework open, listening. "I will." After Noah's follow-up came back clear, Marissa hugged Owen in the hallway. He stood stiffly for half a second, then accepted it. "Thank you," she said. He gave the answer he always gave. "I am glad he is okay." Marissa stepped back. "You know, that is not the same as accepting thanks." Grace from her chair said, "He is bad at that." Marissa smiled. Owen looked betrayed. Elaine passed at exactly the wrong moment and said, "She is correct." For the first time in a long while, Owen laughed inside the hospital without feeling guilty for it. Later that evening, Elaine found him in the second look room reviewing a difficult scan with Dr. Harlan. The discussion was calm, detailed, respectful. Harlan asked Owen what he thought before stating his conclusion. That alone would have seemed impossible a year earlier. When the review ended, Elaine stayed behind. "I have a donor meeting tomorrow," she said. Owen saved the case notes. "Congratulations." "They want to name the room after themselves." "No." Elaine smiled. "That was my answer." He looked at her. "You are learning." "I am." The admission came without defensiveness now. She looked at Grace's drawing on the wall. "I think your daughter named it better than any donor could." "She does that." "Owen." He waited. "I have replayed that morning more times than I can count." "So have I." "I cannot undo it." "No. But I can make sure the hospital remembers it correctly." Owen looked toward the MRI room. "Then remember the patient first, not me." Elaine nodded. "Always." Years from then, people at St. Bridget's would still talk about the second look room. New residents would ask why a child's drawing hung inside a professional review space. Someone would tell them about a small shadow on an MRI, a boy named Noah, a hospital opening, a director who almost let certainty become danger, and a technician who refused to stop seeing what the machine whispered. Some versions of the story made Owen sound fearless. Grace always corrected them. "My dad gets scared," she would say. "He just checks anyway." That was closer to the truth. Owen Carter was not fearless. He feared many things: losing Grace, missing something, speaking up too late, being dismissed, being right only after damage had already begun. But fear in him had been trained into attention. One quiet Friday, long after Noah had returned to school and the donor plaques had gathered fingerprints, Owen and Grace walked past the MRI suite on their way out. The hallway lights were dim. The machine hummed behind the glass. Waiting for the next child, the next answer, the next family trying not to imagine the worst. Grace stopped by the second look room and looked at her drawing. "Dad." "Yeah." "Do you think Mom would like this room?" He looked at the big eye Grace had drawn on the hospital roof. She would ask why every hospital didn't already have one. Grace smiled. Then she would bring snacks. Yes, Owen said she would. They stood there for a moment in the soft blue light. Inside the room, a monitor displayed a scan waiting for review. Not urgent, not dramatic, Just another image that deserved not to be rushed. Owen placed one hand on Grace's shoulder. "You ready to go home?" She nodded. As they walked away, Dr. Mercer entered the room behind them with a young resident carrying a chart. The resident said, "It is probably nothing." Elaine paused at the door. Then she said the sentence that had become part of the hospital's bones. "Show me anyway." Owen heard it from the hallway. He did not turn around. He just held Grace's hand a little tighter. Because sometimes the greatest victory is not applause, or apology, or being called a hero. Sometimes it is hearing the room change after you were brave enough to tell the truth. And sometimes the smallest shadow on a screen is not something to explain away. It is someone's tomorrow asking to be seen.